Okay, we'll call the Waldport City Council meeting of May 28 to order. Roll call, please.
Councilor Virtue.
Here.
Councilor Dunn.
Here.
Councilor Holly.
Here.
Mayor Woodruff.
Here.
Councilor Campbell.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. And I guess we don't have minutes. That's unusual.
This isn't a regular council meeting.
Okay. So the first item is a discussion action item, deliberation and findings on the remand appeal for the Tidewater development. And of course, we have closed the public hearing. So we are at the deliberation stage. So Justin, maybe you want to
Yeah, I was just going
fill
to
us
do a
in?
quick presentation. So I provided some draft findings and conclusions just to show the amendments and additions. This doesn't, as you can see in the conditions there, it doesn't list all of the conditions that were in the previous findings and conclusions documents, but just the ones that were amended or the new conditions, and then all of the proposed new findings here. So you can kind of follow along when I go through
Absolutely.
my presentation. So the staff memo on May 14th, the May 14th meeting stated that staff asked that City Council authorize Sue Woodruff, Mayor Pro Tem, to sign the findings and conclusions document. However, staff recommends that the formal findings and conclusions document is reviewed and signed at a subsequent meeting in June. So these are just the drafts, findings and conclusions here. The formal findings and conclusions document will be provided prior to that June meeting for review. And then, as stated in the staff memo presented on May 14th, the staff recommends the proposed 7 findings and conclusions submitted by the applicant's attorney. And those are the first 7 findings listed in the document you have in front of you. Noting the amendment to the 4th sentence of finding 7 that was noted in the May 21st submittal by the applicant's attorney, Dennis. In addition, staff recommends amending finding number 5 to add or contracted engineer. Just to make a clarification, this clarifies that the engineer may be a contracted engineer. And then next, the additional finding as proposed in Dennis's May 21st submittal related to the City Council hearing and the remand. That's finding number 8 in front of you. I'm not going to read the entire finding. And then next, the additional condition proposed by Dennis in his May 21st submittal related to DEQ permitting. That's will be condition 14, which is on the 3rd page, I believe, for your review. And then, as stated in the staff memo on May 14th, staff recommends updating the condition number 11, phasing and time limits. The new phase 1, since the findings and conclusions will be reviewed in June, will start June 2020. In addition, staff recommends an additional finding that states in-person attendance at the public hearing was limited to the appellant and the applicant's legal counsel due to COVID-19 restrictions, and the public hearing was live streamed. The record was left open 7 days until May 21st, 2020 at 5 p.m. to allow additional public testimony. All comments received before, during, and while the record remained open are included in the record. In addition, as requested, the entire record of proceedings for the case file are included in the record. And next, staff recommends a finding addressing the appellant's statement that the proposal is in violation of Waldport Development Code 161230E and F. The finding shall state the plan development meets the drainage standards listed in 1660, the plan development standards. 161230E and F are outside the scope of the remand. 161230E is evaluated when a building permit is submitted and at the time the applicant will be required to meet the standard for individual lots. And 1612 1230F is related to the applicant, is related to excavation and fill and shall apply when the removal and fill is greater than 50 cubic yards. That's finding number 10. And last, staff recommends a finding that states Waldport Development Code 1670, that's a significant natural resources overlay zone, is outside the scope of the remand hearing. And I guess, oops, sorry, one more thing, not last. An amendment to condition number 9 related to the geotechnical analysis, just to make a clarification that it says prior to construction, a geotechnical analysis prepared by a licensed engineering geologist shall be required prior to construction of both roads and lots on slopes greater than 20%, and construction activities shall comply with any recommendations from the engineer. So that's just clarifying that condition.
Just a quick question on organization. So we've got 2 number 9s and 2 number 11s, and then no 12 or 13. Is that, I mean, maybe we just fix it in the finding, or is there a reason for that?
The findings go 1 through 11.
11.
And then the conditions, these were what they'll be labeled in the final findings and conditions. And there's other conditions.
That aren't?
Yeah.
Okay.
In between there.
Okay.
Those were just not amended from the previous findings and conclusions. They're the same as the previous document.
All right.
Approved in March 2019.
Great. Thank you. Does that conclude your report?
Yeah.
Okay. So, open to the council for discussion.
Well, I am satisfied that if the engineer's report is concurred by the DEQ and the procedures are followed accordingly to the state and the DEQ, that we should pass this.
Does anybody have any particular concerns, or that's still not settled in your mind, or?
I don't, yeah, I concur with Mark. I don't know what else we can do. I mean, if they follow the guidelines, that's all.
Right.
If the guidelines are now established, which is what this does.
My last comment in the previous meeting was that I wanted to see an engineer's report, and evidently it was either there and missing, or it's now been addended. So I've read it over, and I'm comfortable with it, knowing that, you know, the DEQ and our city engineers are going to be observing this.
I concur. So do I.
Well, then I guess we can entertain a motion.
And this is still a preliminary, it's not a final, correct?
Yeah, this is just the preliminary.
Then I move that we continue with the preliminary.
That we affirm.
That we affirm,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries.
And we'll present
The findings will
Yeah,
come
we'll-
to us in June.
We'll create the
Right.
findings and conclusions
Great.
document. For
And
your
those will
review.
be part of the packet that's online
Mhm.
for the June meeting.
Okay.
Great. Okay. Moving along. The meter project discussion is next on the list.
All right, so you have a carry-in document labeled for discussion, single page. We have been discussing for the last several months, actually since I think November, our need to replace the water meters throughout town as one of the objectives proposed in the water plan. that lasts us for the next 20 years that we just completed. The Water Master Plan spells out a number of conditions and concerns that the city needs to address. Many of them have to do with transmission lines. You'll notice that I did not include transmission lines in any of this. Those are issues primarily, there are sources of funding that I'm going to pursue for the transmission line aspects of the Water Master Plan. So I tried to identify the pieces outside of that were single point failures for the city. That if we do not address and were raised as significant concerns within the master plan, that we could be in real trouble. In doing that, we know and have been talking about for the last 5 years or so that we are going to have to do a major overhaul of the water treatment plan. That's been coming. We know it's been coming. And I think we've kicked the can down the road kind of as far as we can. I think Scott actually said to me today that when he was first brought on board to do this job, he said, okay, but we've got to do this in the next 5 years, and it's been 5 years. So I think he's a little anxious to see that part happen. The 2 million gallon tank, obviously, we've talked about how the sealant failed on that, and that we need to, kind of empty that out. As part of that, to do that, we actually have to build a new 300,000 gallon tank. This is to allow us to meet the fire department, the amount of water that we need necessary if there were a
In case
fire.
of fire.
If we emptied the 2 million gallon tank
Right.
for a couple weeks to treat it and get it seismically retrofit and addressed. And then there's as we discussed in the past, the AMI, the upgrade to the water meters. As part of that, and in looking into the technology, right now, and I think you've all heard that we had a water line break earlier this last week. This is not an uncommon occurrence, and some of those can be very challenging to find. We have not had a leak detection service come through. And Scott and I were talking about the prospect of just doing that outright here in the next few months, irregardless. But there are technologies now that are not all that prohibitively expensive that can be built into the AMI metering system that we've decided to move, that we've talked about moving forward with, that actually would give us an on-demand permanent leak detection. So that as leaks like what happened the other Saturday develop, we could get notified pretty much right away and determine down to within a few meters in the pipe where the leak is. I mean, it's really very precise. This gives us a system where instead of trying to figure out where the leak is and hunting it down and potentially digging up significant areas of the road or causeways, this gives us a ability to find leaks and address that 25% loss that we're seeing right now by being able to determine where the leakages are. So in thinking about that, I had a conversation with Holly at the USDA. And I was trying to find out what the scope and scale of the USDA loan package was. And in that discussion, the end result was the more we put into one loan package, the more likely we will A, see potentially greater forgivable portions of that loan. But B, that it's very hard to do one and then another and stagger these. And we would have to be staggering them over the years. Right now, they have historically low interest rates. It's never been this low. And so there's probably no better time to address these large cost items than right now. So what I am proposing, and it's not for a decision of let's accept a $7.5 million loan today, because I don't think we're there yet. What I'm asking for is direction from the council to pursue this line of thinking with our engineer, with our city staff, and with both Dig Deep and the USDA and Business Oregon to put together a package for your approval so that you can see what these pieces might look like total and what the overall rate effect will be. One of the key things, and I've been very conscientious about this, is there's a lot of importance to us to keep the rate increase that we need to bundle on this as low as possible. We have very competitive rates throughout the county. And I believe that with paying off a loan that we're going to do this summer and our current debt capacity, that we'll be able to absorb this with a pretty reasonable increase for this type of major project. So instead of looking at a 20 or 30% increase that might have been necessary to replace the entire water plant, we're looking at potentially between, an 8 to 15% increase to do the same amount of work. So I think this is a real opportunity to explore whether we can get all of this done. And then be able to kind of check off the big ticket items that we'd be looking at in that 20-year water master plan.
You just said the entire water plant. Are we replacing the entire water plant?
So it is a significant overhaul. It is
Okay.
not tearing the thing down and building it
Okay.
back up, but it is adding on, it's replacing the guts, it is
Okay.
retrofitting a good portion of the pieces inside to more modern technology.
Okay. And is there any date by which this package needs to get finished that goes to USDA, or is it?
USDA would really like to see it in this fiscal year, which is
Okay.
October 1st.
Okay,
Which
so
is why I brought it
October.
to you at this meeting, so that we could continue moving forward.
Okay.
And again, no commitment now ties you to, much like what we've done in the past.
Right,
Nothing ties you to anything now. I would expect that you would expect of me a much more detailed proposal with much more specific figures and some preliminary engineering that needs to be done as part of this whole package. The other thing that Holly was indicating was that she would like to sit down with Business Oregon and do kind of a one-stop, which is when we sit down with the lenders that are discussing all of this, and we create the best possible package out of all the different options
Right.
available to us.
Great.
How would we know, or when would we know the percentage of forgiveness that could happen?
I think once we sit down, once she has, so she just got this figure the other day. I'm going to send her some updated budget information as well. I think we could start to get a sense of what that will look like after the one stop. After we sit down with Business Oregon, because Business Oregon might be able to put together a portion of this package along with the USDA. And so we could be looking at a whole package that might mean a 60% forgiveness.
Yeah.
It could be even, it could be potentially larger. It's hard to speculate. Right now, what they've been saying is 40%, which leaves
Right.
us a pretty significant add. But one of the things that she indicated was the larger the package gets, the USDA is very sensitive to what your consumer rates are. And that would allow us to be able to potentially see a greater forgiveness in that.
So we were talking about rate increases
Yeah,
for this our next fiscal year. And what was the percentage?
4.2.
4,
Yeah.
4.5.
And that's mainly just the regular.
Cost of business.
That was for the AMI portion of things.
No,
That was
that's just the cost of
C-
business
The
increase.
CPI
Okay.
thing, yeah.
And then on top of that was the AMI.
We are not doing an AMI or projecting an
Right.
AMI increase right now.
Okay.
Because it's now part of this.
It's either going to be
package.
part of this,
Right.
or because of the water tank settlement, we could buy the meters in cash and just install them ourselves. And that's in the budget that you approved on.
Yes.
Right.
That the budget
Right.
committee approved on Tuesday.
Right.
So the one time at 20%, is that incorporating the 4.5 that we're already approving?
No,
No, so it's a 25% increase.
So we would have to take, well, we don't know what the CPI or the National Construction Index would be next year. So it would incorporate that, but the hope would be that, in the process of doing this package, we would not be at the 40%. I would have a hard time selling you the 40%. That said, these projects do need to get done.
I know that. I mean, that's where we're backed up against the proverbial rock and hard
It's
spot.
not gonna get any cheaper to do it next year.
So, there is one potential option, which is instead of a large 20% increase, you could stagger 10% increases over several years to
Right.
accomplish the same goal.
Right.
Yeah.
That might be more or less palatable to the public and yourselves. What I'm trying to just present right now is these are the thresholds that we're looking at.
Yeah.
And this is kind of, the best possible option I can give you is if we do this all right now and are able to lock in these low rates, it will be cheaper in 5 years than if I come to you in 2 years and say, okay, we have to do the water tank now because it's leaking.
Yeah.
Or 5 years and saying, well, Scott says he's
Interest
gonna
rate
quit
is-
unless we do the water plant because it's about to fail. So, you know, you put all these pieces together in a row, and I think this is our best option for, if you look at what, to keep the water bill as low as possible for our consumers.
So you need direction on applying?
Or just to let us move
Just the
forward?
concept, I
I
think. It's just
want to
concept,
vet
right?
this concept by you, and if it's acceptable, if there's consensus that it's acceptable, I will continue having the discussions with this goal in mind, with USDA and with the other groups and other stakeholders that are involved. If this just dies in its face with you all, I will pursue a different avenue. But this was the avenue. Right now, the last instructions that were provided to the city manager's office was to go ahead with the AMI project.
Right.
That's where we've been proceeding. This is providing an alternative that is more in line with what our needs are, and doesn't have, it foregoes the $1.2 million loan that we were talking about, but obviously is addressing a much larger loan. And we're gonna have some engineering costs associated with that. We're gonna have some, you know, other costs with Dig Deep associated with it potentially, but it does look like a much bigger package overall.
I say move forward. Yeah.
So you're asking for us basically to approve your use of time to go in this direction?
I don't want to start moving this direction and find out that the council is like, what is he doing?
Oh, yeah, what are you doing?
I generally wanted to bring this to your attention and get kind of the blessing of, yes, this is kind of a direction we think we should go until we hit a landmine. And again, I'm going to use this term a lot. There are going to be, you know, there are going to be things where we hit and find out that all of a sudden interest rates went up 5%, and then it just doesn't make sense anymore.
Right. So the debt service that you've indicated here is based on a 40% forgiveness?
Yes. So
And so
40%, then 50
it could be
and 60.
less, as I'm seeing it, right?
Right.
And you're saying between
Right.
8, maybe 15. So the discussion can happen
When
quite
we
a bit
actually
farther,
have-
quite a bit
yeah.
farther down the road
Right.
on how we
Absolutely.
want to
Right.
recover that from
Right.
the,
Yes.
from our.
And I would
levels.
bring you, I would anticipate being able to bring you multiple options if we're looking at a, you know, a 50% or a 15% increase, which combined with the NCI might be towards 20. I could bring you a couple options that might make that a little
Okay.
bit easier.
So when we talked about the AMI and the required rate increase, so staggering a rate increase still would meet the loan qualifications?
And that's, like I said, I would have to bring you those packages based on what I've had with USDA about what we would have to raise our rates for them to make the loan.
Right. I mean, obviously, we stagger it, it just means it would,
Yeah.
you'd have to make up that over the life,
Yeah.
but at least it wouldn't be such a big
Well, that's obviously
bill.
for a later discussion, but I
Right.
think that's going to be necessary in view of the fact that we're already going to pump it 4.5 just because.
Hasn't been done for years.
Well, I know that, but it's
Right.
still, you know, you want to make it at least reasonably palatable
Yeah.
because it's going to be a pretty good hit at some point for some.
And I think the important pieces to keep in mind is we're always going to have that NCI level increase, or we should always have at least
Right.
that NCI level increase. The other important pieces are, you know, we are going to see a little bit of a reduction next year when we have a well-paid staff retire and we have kind of a junior person step into the position. That should allow a little bit of salary savings there. And like I said, with paying off the one loan that we are this summer, that gives us some additional debt capacity so that that increase will be a little less by about 5%, that's my prediction. So we might be able to eat the next NCI increase essentially, and then look at what the increase from the loan is for that 1 year period.
So I have a couple questions on what we've got here. In discussing the $2 million, 2 million gallon. Yeah, it's only $1 million, but that retrofit, that's the one we just got the money for, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
And
and I need to be very specific.
Yeah.
I looked at the engineering report. Obviously, we know that we spent about $250,000 on
Right.
this last time. And so this 2 million gallon retrofit and recoating seems like, oh my God, it went up 5 times. It really didn't. It did go up, and it went up about $200,000. So it's about 450. But there are a bunch of other pieces along with that that are required by the state due to the seismic age of the tank
Right.
that need to happen, that's included in that total overall cost.
And my question about that is, because we're also talking about adding a 300,000 gallon tank, and we have a 300 gallon, so we'd have 600,000.
Yes.
If we add the new one, and we don't need to do anything with the old one right this minute, we think we've got a few years on it. So if we add the new one and we have the 600,000 gallon, do we need the 200 gallon, and should we spend any money on it?
So yes.
Okay,
And
because-
the reason being is the 300,000 is the minimum increase that allows us to handle the daily volume that we have right now.
Okay.
And meet the fire code standards.
Okay.
That's the bare.
The 300 plus the 200 plus the 300, okay.
Not forgetting about the 2 million gallon tank.
Okay, well, that's what I was doing,
Yeah.
okay, so but it's still just minimum,
It's the
okay.
absolute bare minimum
Okay.
that we would need to have during that time period where we took that 2 million gallon tank down. Now, the 2 million gallon tank is actually a little bit too big, as Scott has kind of talked about. We don't the water cycles through about every 10 days.
Okay.
You want actually to cycle through a little
More
faster.
faster, yeah.
One of the discussion pieces, and probably one of the things that we'll examine is, as we move forward with this, is actually possibly increasing the 300,000 gallon
That was
tank
my next
size
question.
a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Such that such that it could serve as that secondary reservoir, and then we could potentially postpone the work on the 2 million gallon tank as appropriate. One of the challenges is the other tank, the 300,000 gallon tank that we have right now is a
Right.
core steel tank that needs to be, the same thing needs to be done towards the end of this
Right.
20-year period
Right.
to it as well. So we have to keep in mind that at some point we have to take some of these tanks down. And if you've ever played that logic game where
Yeah.
you get the 3 different buckets and you
Yeah.
have to put 3 million or 3 gallons in one bucket and none of them are 3 gallons, it's kind of what we're doing.
Right. So how big would the new 300 million gallon tank 300,000, have to be in order to, so you wouldn't need the 2 million gallon one?
So, I was looking at that, looking at the basis.
Yeah.
Basically, we need to have about 1.25 million gallons after all is said and done,
And
based
is
on
that
the
my
projected
minimum,
growth.
or is that
That's from the engineer.
comfortable? Okay.
That's from the engineer,
Okay.
based on the different flow rates and
Okay.
everything that's required and the potential growth over the next few years.
Okay.
The end result in the water master plan is about 1.2 to 1.25 million
Okay.
gallons, which means that potentially, if we wanted to just address it, we'd build a 1 million gallon tank. That said, that gets almost as expensive as building the 300,000 gallon tank and
Yeah,
retrofitting the two.
okay.
And when I looked at that, because Scott and I had been talking about that, when
Yeah.
I looked at that cost, I thought, well, it would be nice to have a brand new 1 million gallon tank, but we have a gorgeous 2 million gallon tank that should last us many, many years being maintained. If we then just did the 300,000 gallon tank, now we have the 3 tanks and we can take any one of them out without an issue.
I guess the disadvantage, because the 2 million gallon tank is the old style that has that, you point out that the glass lined ones are much less maintenance.
So they're much less maintenance over time.
Yeah.
They do have their own negatives.
Okay.
And I was reading quite a bit about it.
Okay.
They tend to be, at least, and Scott can correct me if I misstate here, they tend to be much more commonly used in the smaller tanks. And then when you
Okay.
get to the really large tanks, you see a lot more of these big Corten
The
steel
coating,
tanks.
okay.
And it's interesting, the other piece that really affects cost of these tanks and where these tanks get used are kind of the area and where they're built. So in many places, the requirements of the tank are defined by the kind of the climate and the topography of the area. There was a great one that I saw, and I can't remember the location, but they basically had to build a large tank like this right in the heart of town in a park. It was the only place that really worked. And so the city actually kind of steered into the skid. They actually put a bunch of display work around the tank. They painted and put lights on the outgoing and inflowing pipes. And they put a big interpretive area in front of it and made it part of the park. And that to me was a fascinating,
Yeah,
we can't really
right.
do that here, but it was a fascinating approach
Exactly.
to having to put this big ugly water tank in the middle of the city.
And one other question, because you mentioned that we either could get a leak detection service or we could add it to the AMI system. Have you, and if it's added into the AMI system, is that included in that 635,000? Okay.
Yes, that's included, and I will tell you, I waffled back and forth on this
Okay.
a lot. We could do the leak detection, and it's actually recommended to build in the leak detection, quite often in the water master plan.
Right.
But for the same dollar amount, we can do the leak detection at all times. So over a course of 10 years, it basically pays for itself.
Right.
And I feel like being able to do it on demand, every morning be able to say, oh, hey, any new leaks come up, being able to get that information on the fly rather than having to hire a company at $7,000 a pop was a much better value, I think, in the long run. And I'm a tech guy. I like the idea
Right.
of being able to see leaks in real time.
So at this point, you're really not thinking of doing the service even on a short-term basis?
So we're still actually
Okay.
considering doing the service because it hasn't been done.
Okay,
And it might address some of the water loss issues. I'm still looking at our
Okay.
budget to see whether I could squeeze it
Okay.
in, even if we do proceed with this, because I think there's bang for the buck in just the water that we're losing right now. I mean, if we can cut the water loss, that's quite a bit of water that
It
we're not
is.
selling during
it
the
is,
year.
right, yeah.
I
Okay.
thought we determined that we weren't losing as much as we thought.
We're losing 25%.
Are we?
Yeah,
Now, whether that's loss per leak or one of the
Or-
one of the
or
projects
meters.
that I'm working
That's
on with
what we don't
Scott is we have unmetered water usage that, when they flush something or when the fire department's, examining something, there is water that's used for legitimate purposes that we don't meter. And so there's a project that was recommended by the Water Master Plan that I'm gonna work with Scott to implement that basically allows us to capture some idea of what that is.
yeah.
But I don't know how accurate that's going to be. I mean, you turn on you can kind of get a sense of the flow if you turn on a hydrant for, for 5 minutes. But how much water is that accurately? It's not like we put a meter on it, so it's a little tough.
So what do you all think?
I think we should
I
have
think
him
we should
pursue
move
it.
forward. Yeah, move forward.
More information is better than not in.
Yep, I agree.
Thank you. I will continue working down this line until I hit a landmine or until I have a really good proposal to put together for you.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a letter of resignation from Harry Dennis.
Come on, Harry.
Yeah, right when we're going to discuss the water stuff.
Yeah.
He retires.
That might be connected.
Well, I will say that I had a great conversation with Harry, and he has offered to look, and I will absolutely, pick his brain about water, wastewater, and kind of
Right.
overall, kind of his overall level of expertise.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. And I also had a good conversation with him. He said, meetings just aren't his thing.
Oh, wow.
So, and yes, he does hope to talk to Dan about these kinds of projects, so that's great. Also, we have that announcement of the council vacancy. Has that been posted yet, Rita? Probably not, since we are just now accepting the resignation.
No, the original vacancy was posted.
Right.
The 2 applications.
Right.
I wouldn't post the second one until you accepted the resignation.
Oh, really? Well, okay, right. So, and where do we?
So do we want to open it back up again to?
Well, right now, I was just trying to find out if it had been posted. My next question is, where do we post it? I haven't seen it on Facebook.
It was posted on the city's website.
Okay,
And I think I actually did a Facebook post on it too.
I thought so, but
okay.
Yeah, back when we, back.
Yeah, right, okay.
So,
I do think we need a motion just to accept Harry's.
Yes, right. So I guess we could take care of that
I
first.
make a motion, we accept Harry Dennis's resignation.
I reluctantly second.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, say no and yes.
Yes, we refuse. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All of us reluctantly. Any opposed? None, thank you. Okay, so then I did talk to Heidi. She is been called to grand jury duty, and so she appears every Thursday at the grand jury for May and June. So she,
Just 2 months?
yeah, just 2 months. So she will not be, visiting us at all in May or June. So we now have the two openings. I guess I'll throw it out one more time, whether we want to fill the openings, or since she couldn't join us till July anyway, do we want to go ahead and fill them, or do we want to wait for the election?
Do we? Yeah, no.
The only
Okay,
thing
go
I
ahead.
feel more comfortable is I may have to miss a meeting or two, and I just would feel more comfortable if we have enough for a quorum.
Okay, for a
Do we,
quorum?
I just
Okay.
feel nervous having so few people.
right.
But as of now, having accepted Harry's resignation, our
We're at
quorum
5.
is 3.
Right, our quorum's only 3 now,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do we have anything on our horizon that's significant?
Controversial that we
Well-
might split over.
To be honest, I think the two things that within the next 6 months, if I were to look ahead, that might be significant are if I get this loan package for the meter piece.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
I'm gonna call it the water piece now, not the meter piece, because
Okay.
the meters are a pretty small
Right,
amount.
right.
If I get the water project loan package put together, that's a pretty big one. And I think the big decision point there will be kind of what Councilor Campbell was alluding to, which is we're gonna have to raise water rates, and how we do that. Because we can't get
Right.
$7.5 million without
Without it,
a
right.
little skin in the game.
Right.
I think the second piece, or the second thing that might come up that will be significant in the next 6 months is, we'll do a council work session sometime in the next 2 months regarding some of the goals, but more importantly, some of the building allocation and how we're moving buildings around, or what we may or may not do there. That potentially could have a profound effect on how the cities operate.
Right.
Those are two very, significant issues. Again, most of those are driven by economics, so I don't know, our most controversial issue has been whether to do AMR or AMI, and that's relatively moot at this point.
Right.
But more importantly, the goats was the most significant thing, and I don't see that cropping up. So I don't know that we'll have any embattled issues
Yeah,
such that,
right.
it will be critical one way or the other. But I can't speculate that you might not all disagree with each other about some of these issues.
One never knows where it's going to happen. Because it doesn't happen very often.
It does not.
So, I guess for me, whichever of the two candidates were to fill the first one, and if we wait for Harry's and however and we get additional, whoever's going to fill it, for me, there still is a question of, there's a reason why the council is set at 7 seats, 6 and a mayor. And it would seem like a best interest of the citizens is to provide full representation of additional community members to fill the council seats.
Okay.
I agree.
So is there consensus then
Yes.
that we should do that, or?
I think we need to feel that.
Well, yeah,
Okay.
I'm ambivalent. I mean, I know, having operated for quite a long time, we've been short on occasion, and we've had,
Refunction.
no, we haven't had any real issues with it, but I also agree with Corinne that full representation is important. I mean, now that Heidi is maybe unavailable for at
Till
least
July.
one more month,
Yeah, till July, yeah.
do we still want to go through a voir dire process for the 2 people that have
Well,
applied?
and we, we did want to
And
ask
then-
them some questions, but
Yeah.
nobody submitted any questions. Of course, we had budget
No.
meeting 2 days ago, so
So-
we've been busy. But now we do have the time to get that
And
I don't
together.
want
more
to-
names come in.
Well, I don't want to dismiss her because she's unavailable.
Absolutely, right.
So we'd want both she and Rick to be available to us by August, I guess, huh?
Well, even the July meeting, they could be available. 'cause
Or the
she's-
July, I beg your
Yeah,
pardon,
the
yes.
July meeting, they
Right.
could.
But we
go.
could
And have them
choose
seated.
to appoint Rick now.
That's true.
And then wait until the
For the
posting for
next
Harry's
posting
seat has,
for Heidi.
given-
But that's unfair to Heidi, because between then and the
July.
posting of Harry's, there may in fact be other people
Who step up,
that, they could, sure.
yeah.
I mean,
Well,
it's-
we could
but based
make-
on history, it's unlikely, but, but, you know, then we're, and I don't know Heidi or Rick well at all, but I don't want to feel like we've casted one to drift.
Right.
Just wanting to seat someone for 1 month,
Well, and if we see
And then-
one, then we are locked, so we might be better to wait.
That's
for
where I'm
both of them,
going
So
with
that
that.
we're
Should wait
seven.
till for the-
I
Yeah.
mean, we've got one more meeting in June.
Right,
We could
Wait
have
till
our meeting
July.
in July, have a person seated in August. I don't, and that's where I was going with any significant, I mean,
Why don't we,
one more month.
yeah, why don't we post the notice, see if anyone else applies, and then July make a decision, June make a decision?
That's my feeling, but.
actually, we could seat them, I mean, if there's only two, and we question them, we could seat them in July, and they would be available to continue on with the meeting, or we could
That's true,
seat two
but
of.
there has to be a posting of the other seat.
Yeah, which she will do, right? Now that we've accepted Harry's resignation.
Well, there actually isn't a requirement for us to post. because
Oh, there
the
isn't?
other- No, because the other decision that you could make is just to leave that position vacant.
But we
There's-
don't
there's
want,
no- There's no written requirement anywhere for me to have to post that vacancy.
I got you, but I'd rather be a little more transparent.
yeah, I would too, I think, yeah.
If that's the direction. you want.
I mean, I see Newport's even running ads in the News
Yep.
Times for, you
Mhm.
know.
We're not gonna go that route, that's expensive.
I know, it's expensive,
No,
right?
we don't need to, but. you know.
But as far as transparency, I think
Yeah.
it's nice, you know.
Yeah.
So listening, it sounds like what you'd like us, we'll post this vacancy
Yes.
post haste. We'll collect letters.
Actually,
we'll-
both vacancies.
Both vacancies.
Yeah.
Yes, because
Yeah.
because we
Yeah.
haven't filled the other
Right,
one.
right.
And we will then subsequently bring those letters to your attention at the June 11th meeting, the 11th, correct?
Yeah.
Right,
June 11th meeting.
Yeah.
And then it will be the council's choice of how to proceed from there.
okay. And if we still want to do the questions, then people have to give me
Yeah.
the questions that you
Well.
want asked, yes.
I-
I will try to circulate a reminder for that when it's closer to the June or July meeting, because Heidi won't be available until the July meeting. So,
Well, since we asked for some questioning and it didn't happen, we were to choose one. And then, you know, we did get an influx of perhaps 2 or 3 more people. The one person may feel slighted, and I don't want that.
yeah,
Yeah, that's only more than fair.
yeah. Okay, I guess we've got a consensus. Are we clear whether we're going to question on the July meeting then?
Yeah.
And so the two, Rick and Heidi, who have both already given letters of interest, will be considered for both
Absolutely.
positions.
Oh, absolutely.
But we're
yes.
opening it up for any additional.
Yeah, if more people come in, fine.
Because we were going to make a decision on one of them for one spot.
Yeah, right.
And if we don't get no letters, then we have our two.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
That works for
That's
me.
easy.
Or we could reject them both.
And you want that deadline to be the June meeting?
As far as, well, does
As far as
it
the
need
additional
to be the June? It's probably better, yeah, let's make it
June
the
meeting's
June
like in
meeting.
2 weeks.
But that's
Yeah.
only 2 weeks,
I
yeah.
might suggest we make the deadline.
A 30
the
days.
Friday prior to the.
Yeah, there you go. So
Prior-
it's in-
Prior to the July meeting?
Yeah, so that it's in the packet. Anybody's in the packet.
So you want the letters by Friday of July?
So they're in the July packet.
Okay.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
But then
Okay.
you
And then
question,
invite anyone who wrote a letter to the July meeting.
And we
Yes.
will have questions,
And
yes.
then you can
Yeah,
have-
right.
Okay, that works.
Excellent.
and if there's only 2, then we can seat them at the July.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because they can be
Alright, cool.
sworn in immediately.
Cool.
Well, you can't.
We can't?
Oh,
No,
Rita.
you can appoint them. but-
Appoint them.
Okay.
Well, but-
I guess I could have oaths of office written up.
There you go.
For every person who has applied.
There you
We can administer the oaths of office to the 2 women. Okay, we can do that.
And don't you just usually do it with the blank and then you fill in the name?
No.
We'll come up with a passable
All right.
solution.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll come up with a passable
Okay,
solution for you.
All right,
That's not an insurmountable problem.
okay.
Wow.
All right. Next item is the Wednesday market proposal. And we have someone here. Do you want to speak to this, Eric, or you just want us to?
Well, I kind of put in there, there's not much more to say. I think it'd be a big benefit to beachgoers, you know, as we know, we postponed it. We
Right.
canceled it, and I've done that for many reasons, but in hopes that we might be able to still, you know, in October, November, maybe do something, but even then, that stuff is marginal too. So
Right,
I see it as a way to take some of the burden that all these businesses have already taken, you know, including my own. We've all taken some pretty major financial hits this year.
right.
So by utilizing, putting the Wednesday market money in there, it'll kind of make it less that we need to go to those businesses and say, you know, hey,
Exactly.
instead of $1,000, can you give us $500? You know, that kind of
Exactly.
thing to make the event. So.
So we also Hackett, the letter about that.
I just have to disclose I'm vice president of Beachcomber Days. I have no financial interest in it, therefore I don't feel like I have to recuse myself.
From the city standpoint, one of the big challenges that we were facing is our ability to do the Wednesday market.
Right.
It was a great disappointment to me that there was
Right.
no obvious solution, and with COVID restrictions in place and with our budget considerations, I did not see a way around that. This is a way to continue this fine tradition for the city. I think this could be a model for a longer term, very successful way to operate this structure in such a way that is beneficial both to a ongoing organization that, you know, the community has expressed significant desire to continue and provide revenue there, and allow the city to not have to pay attention to how to do it ourselves.
Right.
So I think, honestly, I see this as a big win-win.
So one question I have about it is they're asking for us to carry the insurance, and I thought that was the very reason that we were not willing to do it anymore.
Well, so the insurance is a piece of it.
Okay.
And I think that based on the presentation that they have right now, I think we would need to get a rider specifically for that event and the third party and figure out exactly what those costs are.
Okay.
I can do that necessarily with your guidance. I can do that such that they could get started. I mean, obviously, this can't really start until we're in phase 2
Yeah,
anyways,
right.
effectively. So I think I could work that out and get that piece in place. And if it's reasonable, move forward. And if it's not, I think I could just have a negotiation with with the party
Right.
about how that looks and what those
Right.
costs are associated.
Just for your information, I had asked Jeanette Woolsey of Allstate for a quote because when Waldport
Right.
Arts Group was interested in doing it at one time, and she quoted me $900 for the season because she had just quoted Yacht's
A similar.
a similar figure for their farmers market season. Well, of course, that was pre-COVID, so I don't know what the
Yeah, I'd
figure would
want
be
to talk
now.
this, I'd want to talk through our broker to CIS, who are insurance
So-
provider.
Okay.
I think it would probably be in that neighborhood, I'm sure,
That
hopefully.
wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, so.
I just have two technical questions about the letter included. One on the map, where the Bend and Alder, where station 60 and 49 and 48, doing one-way traffic, I'm kind of confused as to, you have traffic circling around onto 34 from Alder and back in?
Yeah,
Yeah, so-
it would basically would have to, you know, I'm still playing with that and how, and that would only be used if we run out of space due to the separations. If we, you know, have a couple extra vendors and say, hey, we really want to join. So then we have to figure out the logistics then, but that is just more of a, this, if I need to use this, cancel. And I'll make sure it's, you know, the one way.
So would that be the spot where you would also
Yeah.
count?
We'd have to,
The
that's
50.
the other part of that blocking that off is that you'd have that, I can't remember the name of the road, that road right there, that little short section would be blocked off.
Mhm.
So that
This
we-
one right here, whatever it is.
Yeah, so, yeah, this would stay through, but that little piece right there would be closed.
Okay.
So that we could do the
Idea of, if it's 10 vendors, it's one thing if we're at 30 vendors or something. The number of hand sanitizing stations,
when I called TNL, that was like for 4 stations, and I did basically his and her restroom, two porta potties, and 4 stations throughout the whole, I was figuring in the corners.
Could we,
If we need
Okay.
to increase
Well,
that, we can.
I was wondering, could we ask the vendors to provide us?
We could do that. That's a
Yeah,
good idea.
I mean, we do it, and we've got them stationed all over our place, but
Right, no, that's a good idea.
they're more available now than they were a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe we could have the vendors, because that'd be an expense to either you or us,
Right.
and just part of their condition.
and it would seem like if you're exchanging your card or cash,
Right, you should have it
that's
right
the
there.
time when you want to sanitize.
That's exactly right, so maybe that could be a,
Make that part of the requirement.
Yeah, I think it would make it part of the deal.
It's not just a very small cost.
Yeah, yeah,
Those little
right.
hand
Yeah.
pump things,
$7, $8 maybe.
So I also had a question about the need for the portable toilets. Why could they not use the center toilets?
So right now, due to the cleanliness standards that we need to imply, and that essentially that building being closed likely into phase
Yeah.
2, the center at this point will still be closed to the general public. So until we're able to open that building and are able to do the sanitation required, this would be a preferable solution.
But if they're going to do the cleaning,
And that's, again, one of those situations
Yeah.
where, if it was an outdoor access to the building and it was
Yeah.
really easy, much like we have at the
Yeah.
interpretive center, that would be one thing. But because it really is ingress into the building and creates the opportunity for, that building to have additional use,
Okay.
I think right now that doesn't really
Yeah.
fit with our model.
okay. And has there been any thought to changing the day from Wednesday to Tuesday or Thursday? Because
Honestly, no, we haven't, I just simply put it.
Okay.
Oh, is it conflict?
it's a conflict with the Meals on Wheels program on Wednesday, and I don't see that moving because they do Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So if there's some reason why it absolutely can't move, fine, but if it could move, I know that they would very much appreciate it.
What are the 2 neighboring cities' dates or days?
I think Yachts is
Sunday for Yaha, Newport is Saturday.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, so
Yeah.
Tuesday, Thursday wouldn't be a huge,
No. At least because I know the Wednesday market before had several vendors from both that would come to the
Right,
Wednesday market here.
right.
So as long as they have a day, at least
Yeah.
that day in between.
Right,
they can
still
carry out
during the
there and
week.
get down here.
Does
Right.
Toledo do Tuesday? I think Toledo does
I think they do
Tuesday.
Thursday,
Oh, is it
actually,
Thursday or
yeah,
Tuesday?
or at least that's what it used to
The
be.
new Wednesday market now on Thursday.
Or Tuesday, yeah. And then I have no idea whether the $300, the 25%, whether that makes some kind of economic sense, or is it just kind of thrown out there
Well, it
because
was
we don't
all
really
the-
know?
Yeah, with all the vendors, with the beachcombers, we were looking at $1,500 for the 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
So if it comes out to, $1,000 a week, that's, of course, $4,000 a month.
Right,
You take the 25% to help with that, the insurance, to offset
Right.
the insurance, my idea was try to make it break even for the city, so the city didn't have any cost. The $300, yes, until we can get the community center opened back up.
okay,
So we might for, a few couple months here, it may run into red, but then I think we'll be okay once we can utilize that community center thing, because then that cost will just go away.
right.
So,
And it is a lesser capacity.
So I guess you will work on it,
So what
Conceptually,
What I'm looking for
Yeah.
is just permission
Conceptually,
to
yeah.
create an agreement
I-
with the group
I
under
think,
a framework similar to this.
yeah, I think we should try and move forward. I mean, just trying to get some
Right,
semblance of
something going.
normalcy
right,
back in people's mental well-being.
right.
Yeah.
And the sooner the better.
You get
To do
spirit
the-
booster.
Well, we have to wait for,
Right.
we have another 10 days or so before the
Well, then honestly,
review.
Even if me and Dan sat down tomorrow and signed something, it wouldn't matter, it's gonna take me, I think, 2 or 3 weeks to get everything in place.
Yeah.
contact all the-
Got to contact everybody.
So
and-
it won't be
Yeah.
until the end of June before I get it online either, so.
So I guess my question to you is, will you enable me to sit down and just work out a contract and sign it, or would you like it to come back to you at the June
No.
13th?
I'm good with just moving forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it will follow a similar structure
Right.
to what's kind of outlined here. And again, my goal will be to ensure that the event can take place and the city is not in the red in
Yeah,
running it.
because-
Because we're already in the red
Yeah,
in running the
right,
building.
right.
Did, did you have a spot there last year or the year before?
Did I?
Yes.
No.
Who has? I was just wondering about the 50-person capacity. Is that, I mean, I wandered around there aimlessly often, but
Well,
I've never noticed that many.
Well, I was wondering how you would even police that, because you can get it inside by,
We are gonna, I already have looked into it's gonna be.
Doing a perimeter?
A lot of work, but I'm gonna fence it off.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
that, like rubber
At least
fencing?
rope it off,
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things I need to explore as well, and this will be a discussion with our insurance carrier, is, can we do it? I think we'd have to do it in phase 2 anyways.
Right.
But once we're in phase 2, does that 50-person limit include the vendors or not?
oh, right, because there you
Because
are.
if you get 30
Yeah.
booths with 1 or 2 people in each booth,
Yeah.
well, that's great, we've got a nice market that nobody can shop in.
Yeah, right.
Right.
So,
Right.
but that said, having been to the Wednesday market many times, I can't
Yeah.
remember ever there being 30 booths in the Wednesday market. So,
Yeah.
I do think that there will be a appropriate mix.
So our next meeting's in 2 weeks, so I guess the only thing is if when you start working on the insurance or whatever, things change wildly, I guess, you
I
can
would
bring it back
yeah,
and still be within the
If I'm
timeframe.
unable to create an arrangement with Eric that I
Yeah.
feel is appropriate,
Yeah.
I'd bring it back to
Yeah.
the city and say, okay,
Okay.
here are the concessions, we need to have a discussion.
Okay.
And also, if between now and the June meeting, you can decide on which day it's going to be.
Right.
We can include a proclamation in the council's
There you
packet,
go.
so that they can proclaim the event on their behalf, which absolves the vendors from having to get a business license
Right.
in order to do the whatever day market.
Right, the whatever it is.
And is there any objection if Beachcombers so decides, is there any objection to if it's Thursday or if it's Tuesday, naming it, allowing them to call
Oh.
it the Beachcombers Tuesday Market
That-
to
yeah.
avoid the Wednesday Market confusion?
Yeah,
No, that's fine.
why not? I mean, if
I
they're
just,
doing
I think
it,
if we
yeah.
start calling it Wednesday Market and it ends up on Tuesday, it's
Yeah.
gonna be really bad. You get a bunch of people out there on Wednesday going, wow, nothing's going on.
Yeah, right. Okay, next item, we need representatives for the COG and for the Economic Development Alliance of Lincoln County.
Didn't Harry serve on some additional,
Solid waste.
He was on, oh, right, so
So
now we're
now
out of
solid waste
solid
as
waste.
well.
I thought he was on 2 or 3 different.
He was the second for me on the COG Transportation Advisory Committee.
Oh, okay.
That.
Yeah.
I'd like to claim EDLAC, because I know they're
Okay.
going through some
Changes?
reorganization. I've talked with the county commissioners about it. I'd like to serve on that if it's possible.
How about the COG? That's
I
what you, Dan, have been, right?
That's, yes, I've
Yeah.
been member of the COG for
I am willing to serve on the COG if no one fights me for it.
Not likely.
I might fight back, but it doesn't seem like there would be a,
Is that one that also meets in Albany with the
So
Toledo?
it has two options.
Yeah.
It meets in Albany every 2 months, and there is a site for video telecommuting in Toledo.
In Toledo.
At the COG office. Right now, I think they're still doing everything Zoom, but I don't know if that will be true at their next COG meeting,
Right.
which I want to say the next COG meeting is in July, but I'm not positive on that
Yeah,
right now.
yeah.
So I think they just did their one for May.
And I don't know if that COG meeting is the same as the CWAC, but the CWAC, people that are in Toledo, first of all, the audio
It's horrible.
doesn't, it's horrible,
Yep.
so if you can possibly go to Albany,
It is-
you're much more a part of the meeting. 'cause,
I
yeah.
have driven to Albany for almost every meeting in the
Yeah.
last 5 years. It is, the one time I stayed in Toledo was miserable.
Yeah,
They were about to hire an IT guy, but he got a different job to
Yeah.
fix that,
yeah,
so.
yeah, it has not been fixed.
Where is it? Is it on Queen?
Yes.
It's on Queen.
It is.
1500
Yeah. at the-
Queen? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Know where it's at then.
And they should be remodeling, they also were gonna hire somebody to remodel that whole space, but he got a different job too, so.
Oh, okay.
That was me.
So I was the second on the solid waste. I guess I could fill that unless somebody else.
Don't sound so excited, Sue.
I mean, I was on it before, so I'm very familiar with it.
There you
And
go.
since I'm only doing this for a short time, I will muddle through unless somebody really wants to join that committee. It is kind of fun, actually. All right, I will do that. So I guess that takes care. Do we need a motion on this? These?
Nope, I just wrote down the volunteers.
Okay, all right, great. The next item is a COVID funding discussion that I assume Dan has for us.
Yeah, so, the state has a significant amount of money for a COVID response that they're supposed to be passing down. We have been told that they are going to hand out about, X amount of dollars by a certain amount of time. I turned in our request for COVID funding. It's one of these shell games where had we spent $100,000 before May 15th, I could have turned in receipts for $100,000 before May 15th, and it potentially could be reimbursed. We've only spent about $5,000 or $4,700 before that. However, this is just the first round of funding, and there's going to be a second round that encompasses some things that we could spend money on and could potentially get funded for. However, and this is the big what if, we could also spend $30,000 doing some infrastructure pieces that we really need to be able to do some of the meeting stuff that we've done in the past, or that we tried to do with Zoom on
Right.
personal equipment. We could spend this money doing these things for COVID response, and it could turn out that the state never does a second round and we don't get reimbursed. Now, we've been told that they will do a second round, but it's no guarantee. So, kind of what I am throwing out there is there are projects that we could spend money on that are appropriate for COVID response, including some supplies, some pieces that are integral towards hand sanitation in some of the bathrooms, some of the construction work up front to make it more palatable for people to come in without having to have masks and not expose staff. There are a bunch of pieces that I can do, and I can spend this money, and I think it will get reimbursed, but I'm not sure. It's a gamble because I don't know what the state's going to do. I don't know if the state, facing a 5-year, $10.2 billion deficit, is going to find a way to not disperse this out. I don't know if the rest of the communities are going to jump on top of this and submit $800 million worth of spending as well. In the scheme of things, there should be a portion that's dedicated to our city, but the way that it's being handled is kind of those who have spent it, submit your receipts, and maybe or maybe you won't get reimbursed. So the big question is,
You have to spend the money up front
yes,
and then ask for,
and hope that that's the
It'll
direction
be
the state
covered.
chooses to go.
Given our current budget situation,
Yeah,
that's
I'm not-
really not
I'm not
terribly
real comfortable
exciting.
spending money that,
We don't have. Now, well, the one thing I will say is the amount is not substantial. So the risk is, $30,000, not $300,000. But there is a question of whether we want to try to, some of these things we want to try to do anyways. The question is, do we want to try to do them given the restraints?
when would the projected allocation of funds happen?
So this first round, well, they asked for the responses by this last Friday. And so I submitted the responses for our initial spending of stuff that we spent, like, getting this stuff set up over at Umpqua.
Right, okay, so that's
The second
that's the
round-
4,700.
Yep. The second round is supposed to be in July. So my guess is they'll say expenditures by July 1st.
Okay. Do you have a list of things that you think would be on a wish list for us?
Yes, so the three items will be supply, it would be PPE supplies, basically, sanitation supplies for all of our buildings, and the ability to distribute it and have stations at all of our buildings. The second would be kind of modernizing both the sound and the telecommunication equipment in this room so that we can do a better job of broadcasting, and this is nothing against Eric here at all, but we could do a better job in-house of being able to broadcast a council meeting to even all of you without having to be, I mean, I was having to run those from my office at home. And the third piece would be the remodeling of the front here, which was the door. We've talked about moving a door to the rest of the council chamber or to the rest of the city hall and putting up a plexiglass shield so that you walk, so that we can be open. You can walk in, but the entire office space isn't open, which it is right now, such that our staff could have some level of protection and we could open City Hall back up to normal business.
How much would that particular piece cost, do you think?
That looks to be about $7,500 plus or minus about $1,500 in terms of who I've talked to.
So 10, probably
Nine?
at the most.
So
Yeah,
5 to
9
9.
to 10.
5 to 9, yeah, it's everybody, or 6 to 9. Everybody has a different
Right.
gauge on what it's going to cost. But the telecommunication piece could be as much as 15, and then the supplies could be as much as 7.
So you're looking at like many businesses do, a plexiglass type of a thing so you can interact and have.
Yep. So you can pay your bills, you have a conversation, but
You do that at the courthouse, it's always been that way.
Right.
yeah.
So that would be a permanent thing then?
Yes.
Okay.
Some of these changes and some of the stuff that the library is doing, some of these changes are going to have to be permanent.
Yeah.
You know, with everything that's happening, even after everything is said and done, some of these changes are going to be just basically for the betterment of ensuring for the next 2 years at least that there's some lack of communicability if somebody's ill.
Well, it's certainly tempting to get repaid by some of the things that we need to do anyway.
And for me, the tech piece, as I look at the projections for next fall and winter, I think we're going to go back to the place where we can't meet in person.
It's very possible. And that's my biggest challenge right now is if we go back to that model, it was not incredibly successful. I mean, the meetings worked, but they were not incredibly successful.
Right.
They were abridged meetings. We really had to cut agenda items short. And it didn't allow for a great ability for the public to easily watch it in a way that people were happy with.
Right.
I'm not saying that this is going to make it 1,000 times better, but it will mean that if Information Station can't come in and bring their equipment, we can still have a meeting and have a broadcast. It will mean that we will be able to do some of the things like Newport does without having to kind of beg, borrow, and steal equipment. I mean, when I do our Zoom calls, for example, I'm still using my own camera from home. You know, and that's just one of those pieces that if we put these things in place, we can actually have that capability here. Right now, we are very non-technical at City Hall. It's the politest way to describe it.
So where would we find the $30,000 to spend on this?
So, given the likelihood of receiving a chunk of money paid back,
Yes.
we should have the cash flow available in contingency to be able to do this.
It's a gamble.
At the numbers, you're just the 9K,
Well, that's
not
for
the
the
whole
one
30?
piece.
Well, we could do any piece, or
I
we
know,
could
but-
do the whole package.
I know, but shouldn't we prioritize and try and get perhaps the 3 or 4 things that you've outlined looked at and not,
The 3 or 4
That's
things
the
I
30.
outlined is the 30K.
That's
It
the
is,
30,
yeah.
yes, right.
Are you feeling lucky?
So,
well, you know how I am, I don't like to spend the
so the
people's
level,
Yeah,
the level of
that's why I brought it to you.
the level of certainty of
is uncertain.
of
It's
state of the
uncertain.
state is what, we're at 20% certain?
So here's what I will say. We are not going to be a big, at 30,000, we're not going to be a big ask. I know that there are entities out there who are going to be in the $100,000, $200,000, and $300,000 range
Exactly.
that are our size. So my hope is that it's such a small amount that they say, oh, that's easy, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, right.
My concern is that the state gave away 200 million, and that's gonna be it. And they're going to find a legal way to just not do any more disbursements, other than to large municipalities that have really good legal teams. And that's a distinct possibility that they
That have
turn
really
off
good what team?
legal teams.
Are you discounting Peter?
I'm not discounting Peter, but I don't think we want to spend the type of legal fees necessary.
Okay, well, would there also be maybe a chance that they would say, okay, we'll give you 10K back?
There is a distinct possibility that they say, we will give you 30%, 50%, 75%
Right,
of what you
okay.
spend.
And how do they identify what the purposes is of what it is that
That's
we're
how we
doing?
describe it.
So it's
It's
kind
how
of,
it's how we put a nomenclature on it?
Exactly.
it's kind of an honor system thing. In the
Okay.
description that I turned in, it's like, what are your COVID-related expenses?
Right.
If we come there, can you prove that it's a COVID-related expense?
Exactly.
And I can
Well, the
pretty
IT
effectively
stuff
do
certainly
that.
would be.
Well, so would that
And
front,
so would
that
the,
front door
yeah,
thing.
so
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, I think they're defensible.
Yeah,
It's
all
just-
all of it's defensible.
Yeah.
All of it's things that I think we may be forced into kind of buying anyways in
Yeah.
the next year.
Yeah.
Especially if we do see if we go back into a, phase one permanent type situation, I could see us needing to make some of these expenditures irregardless. The real question to me is the risk versus reward, whether we spend the money now and hope that we get paid back, or we wait until our hand is forced and we may not see funds to pay those back. And I was really uncomfortable. I was sitting the other day looking at a bunch of gear for this, ready to hit the purchase button. And I'm like, I want to speak to the council about this because this is more of a gamble than I think is really I'm comfortable making in terms of if we don't get paid back.
Yeah.
And there's no way to know ahead of time, obviously. You have
There
to
is-
spend it first
There's
and
a
then.
significant, I will
Yeah.
say this, and it's public record, there's a
Yeah.
significant amount of money out there.
Yeah.
I think the state got 1.2 billion, and it doesn't include, and because Multnomah and Washington County were too big,
Yeah.
they're excluded.
You're right.
And so that whole amount of money has to go through the rest of the state. The state has taken 400 million off the top already, so I
Right.
think it's 800 million. Don't quote me exactly
Yeah,
on these
right,
numbers, because
right.
I'm trying to remember off
Right.
the briefing.
Seems like there's 200 million
They've
supposed to
said
come.
200 million that's supposed to come in this first round, and
Yeah.
that's gonna take a lot of stuff, and maybe we don't even go through that. But I think with the idea that there will be a second round, more people will do some expenditures like we're talking about that have been holding off. At the end of the day, though, I think that if there are 300 cities and 400 million, and then, 50-some counties or whatever, you could see everybody get $300,000, and maybe we're the fools for not spending higher.
Right.
I don't think that will be the case. I would not advocate spending $300,000, nor do I think we have $300,000 in COVID-related expenditures. I will say one of the pieces, though, was in providing meals. So there are some organizations that should be able to justify some of their costs in providing meals to those who can't get out. And I do hope that I see huge numbers go to Meals on Wheels and some of those other organizations, potentially even like the Moose, although I
Right.
don't know if they'll qualify.
Right.
Right.
Especially because they've gotten donations for everything they've done so far.
I really do
Yeah.
hope, though, that some of those organizations that have been doing such wonderful service do see a big chunk of this. But at the same token, I do think that there is some value in maybe addressing some of the low-hanging fruit and hoping that by not going too high, that we're a reasonable request.
So when are we supposed to know whether we get round one?
They didn't say that.
Oh, nice.
Well, they extended the deadline.
They extended the deadline. After I met the deadline,
Yeah.
they extended it another week.
Okay.
But they didn't expend so your funds had to be expended by May 15th.
Right. They didn't
And we
extend
found
that.
out on like May 17th.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I would have spent a
Yeah, more.
significant more amount in that round, because I
Yeah.
think that round's pretty assured.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what do we think?
Could we have a little more solid numbers in June as to these?
The problem is I basically need to make these purchases now so that we
Oh.
can get them
Right.
invoiced and
Right.
billed
Gotcha.
in before the deadline
Before
gets
the
cut.
deadline, right. And what is the deadline for, you said July, at the end of July?
They say they're gonna do another round in July. My
Okay.
guess is that the deadline will be July 1st. That would be my
Guess.
speculation.
Okay.
Because otherwise, one of the rules is these can't be budgeted expenses. And with the budget cycle and the fiscal year, there will be very little reason for people to have COVID-related expenses not budgeted starting the new fiscal year. So really, at the end of the day, these should be budgeted expenses. My guess is the state will say, okay, July 1st is their, June 30th is the cutoff. Anything after that, and then submit your stuff by July 15th.
So you're saying they cannot be budgeted expenses?
Cannot be
Okay.
budgeted expenses.
And we have not,
We have not budgeted
Yeah,
any of
okay.
those expenses.
okay.
Okay, all right.
It's in this fiscal year.
Yeah, that's
That's
right.
And we didn't know
We
COVID
didn't,
existed,
we
so-
didn't budget this last year.
Right, no.
Well,
certainly.
it seems to me, and you know how reticent I am about spending people's money, but it is, in the long run, going to be more of a permanent fix for some of the things that we're encountering now, particularly the IT things and the
Front door.
protecting Robin and Rita for dealing with people across that counter. I think it's,
I don't ever want us to have another Zoom meeting. That Zoom meeting was god awful. When I was trying to run it, it was awful. It was horrible.
where are we taking the 30K from?
It'd be contingency out of the general fund.
We need to vote on it?
I wouldn't mind having a motion
Yeah.
on this one.
Somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make the motion that we take 30K out of the general fund for COVID projects. How does that sound?
Up to?
Up to.
Up to.
Up to 30,000.
And I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
So we'll have a budgetary amendment document for you at the next council meeting that kind of formalizes this for the audit purposes.
We'll have one anyway.
I was going to say,
Okay.
there's probably.
We always have
We
one.
always
Yeah, well, yes,
have
true,
one.
yeah, of course we do. I always kind of forget that. But, and I will try to spend as little of that as I can. I mean, if we can get it done for 20, that's what I'll spend.
Okay, thank you, Dan.
Thank you. So, any other issues to come before the council?
I just want to tell you that people have been asking me about yard sales, so I checked with the state government. You can have a yard sale. It is a retail thing. You just don't have more than 25 people in your yard at a time. Have a sanitizer available. It's fine. Okay. People have been asking me that.
I've seen some discussion on Facebook about it too.
So now you know.
Any other issues? I guess I will mention that the newly formed Parks Committee, we have completed phase 1 of our first project with the planting of flowers in the downtown planters. We've kept them watered through yesterday, and then Jimmy will be taking over from now on for the rest of the summer. And we will be planning other projects that we will be getting busy on soon. So, seemed to go over big. There were lots of positive comments on the Facebook page. So, hopefully, the flowers will be getting big quickly and everybody can see all the color. Anything else?
We've got public comment.
Yeah, any public comments?
Of course I have a public.
Of course, yeah.
I can guarantee you that the citizens who took the time to write in comments are just as disappointed with your decision as I am. It's clear that you, as our council and mayor, have not taken into account in your deliberations. You didn't even acknowledge any of the comments. 8 comments came in. You didn't discuss any of the comments in your deliberation. That is very upsetting to me as a citizen, and I know I can speak for them. And that also negates the 20 signatures that were gathered on the other comments that were given to you as our counselors and our representatives in making a decision. Every one of those addressed drainage and pollution. And there, in my opinion, of listening to you today, I take great offense that you did not acknowledge one comment. And I'm appalled at that. And that you deliberated for 5 minutes. I'm shocked. And I know that there are other citizens out there that you take a week and say, give us your comments. We will address them during deliberations. And you have failed the citizens who took the time to write and identify issues that definitely were related to pollution and drainage. It's appalling. As well as if you go back, and as I asked you, as our counselors, to go and look at the final opinion and order, it states in there, I pointed out in there, that Luba said it should go back to the commissioners. All of you have ignored that and disregarded that in your decision. And I regret that. And I'm not alone in my regrets.
I thank you for your comments. I think we disagree with some of your points, obviously, but, and I think that we did look at what we, the part of it that we needed to address within the law, and many of the letters did not deal with that. Some may have, but we're looking at the issue, not what this person or that person wants. It's the law about that issue.
There were two.
I read every one of them.
And I did too.
There were two that were maybe did not fall into that category out of the 8.
But it doesn't matter when the law states that if things are being done accordingly,
Right.
things are being done accordingly with the engineer's report and the agreement by DEQ and our engineer, we don't stop projects.
Right.
And I read every one of them, so don't say we didn't deliberate. And I read every one of them, I'm sure my counselor friends did too.
Absolutely.
Yes,
If
we
we
did.
had something to deliberate over, we would have done so.
Wow.
This has been going on for 2 years or longer.
Right.
So you just
So-
want to push it through without listening
We
to
didn't
them?
just
No,
push it through,
no.
we've read everything.
Well, it's a matter of opinion.
Okay.
Yes.
That's my comment.
Yes,
That's my comment.
right, and that was my comment
And
too.
I'm entitled to my comment.
Yes, you are, and you're
Absolutely.
welcome every time. And
Yes.
you've been, I think, treated with respect every time you've been in here.
And I think I've treated you with respect.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
as well.
absolutely. We
Take
agree.
it.
Any other citizen comments? Okay, council comments.
Just one for, as the last council meeting happened, I was indicating that, we do charitable things up at the golf course, and every year we do one for the Pastega House. And this year was challenging, of course, because we generally get together and do it a large group. We did manage to figure out a method in which we could feed everybody and have our tournament and so on. And we raised just shy of $1,000 for Pastega House.
That's good.
And, which was nice. Last year was a little over 1,200, but I didn't invite as many diners as I normally do, because we oftentimes will have people that'll join us for dinner that don't participate in golf.
Like me.
Because, yeah. But, with the constrictions of you know, my restaurant and such, we wanted to make sure that we were kind of flowing and not having, you know, more than 25 people at one time, which seemed to work out well. That being said, there are other organizations and people that need help. We're going to do a similar thing for the Moose. As you all may be aware, they've been feeding a lot of people, over 10,000 meals so far. And we're going to do another one at the end of June. Hopefully things will start opening up, but just one of the things we're trying to do to help out.
Great. Any other council?
I just want to say that the banners for the seniors will be going up tomorrow.
Okay.
That was a very long process. Thank you, Dan, for helping, and Scott. That was, yeah, never want to do that again. Working with ODOT is, yeah, we'll just leave it at that. But yeah, they'll be going up tomorrow, so there may be some, little bit of traffic congestion, but it should be done within a couple hours.
Okay, very
Good for
good.
that. Right on.
Any others?
May I ask one other question that's not related to the remand?
Certainly.
I noticed that you have changed your agenda, so if someone came in and wanted to make public comments, they have to sit through the entire meeting.
Yeah, I
And
was-
in the past, you
Yeah, I
had
think
it
it's
at
just
the
this.
beginning.
It was just, this was a special meeting.
Because it was a
Okay,
special
it-
meeting.
It was unclear to me if
Yeah.
that was going to be the new norm or not.
No, we tried.
Not that I am aware of.
I appreciate that, and
Yeah.
I know a lot of citizens
Yeah.
will appreciate that.
I don't hear any more, so I think we're ready to be adjourned.
See you
Okay,
June
very good.
11th.
Take advantage of.